A simple favor that unraveled everything. Don't forget to like this story, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. I had always been a firm believer in the quiet ripple effect of life, how the most unassuming gestures could trigger unforeseen tidal waves. Never did I imagine that something as simple as a favor, a momentary act of neighborly kindness, could become the catalyst that shattered the carefully constructed edifice of my marriage, leaving me teetering on the precipice of a reality I hadn't even dared to dream. It all began on a Friday evening steeped in domestic tranquility. The gentle aroma of lavender, released from the flickering candles I had strategically placed around the living room, mingled with the soft, soulful hum of jazz emanating from the corner speaker. I had just finished the quiet ritual of cleaning up after dinner, the clinking of plates and the swish of the dishcloth fading into the peaceful ambience, when my husband, Mark, walked into the kitchen, his phone clutched in his hand, a hesitant furrow creasing his brow. "Hey, honey," he began, his tone deceptively casual, yet a subtle undercurrent hinted at a deeper purpose to his inquiry. "Do you remember Tom?" The name resonated instantly. Tom. Mark's steadfast friend from his early days at the firm. He had been a familiar face at our wedding, a quiet observer amidst the boisterous celebrations all those years ago, and had remained a peripheral presence in our lives, occasionally joining our low-key game nights. He was a man of quiet dignity, never vying for the spotlight, but always offering thoughtful insights when he did speak. I also knew he was single, the aftermath of a difficult divorce casting a shadow over his usually composed demeanor. "Of course, I remember Tom," I replied, absently drying my hands on the soft cotton towel. "Why?" "Well, he's in a bit of a bind," Mark explained, shifting his weight slightly, his eyes avoiding mine for a fleeting moment. "He's leaving for a business trip tomorrow, a pretty important one, and he just found out his dog sitter canceled at the last minute. He asked if we could possibly look after Buddy for a few days." Buddy. A name that conjured a vague image of a furry companion. I had never been particularly drawn to pets, content with the quiet order of our home. Still, I didn't dislike them. A well-behaved animal was hardly an imposition. Yet, a flicker of hesitation sparked within me. "For how long?" "Just the weekend," Mark assured me quickly, his relief palpable. "He'll be back Monday evening." I told him it wouldn't be a problem, but I wanted to check with you first. I sighed, the image of my meticulously clean house potentially succumbing to canine chaos flashing through my mind. But then, I saw the genuine concern etched on Mark's face, the unspoken plea for understanding. A small smile softened my lips. "I suppose I can handle a dog for a few days." Mark's face broke into a grateful grin, the tension visibly easing from his shoulders. He leaned in and kissed my forehead, a gesture of affection that felt routine, almost automatic. "You're the best, you know that?" He added that Tom would drop Buddy off in the morning. The next day, precisely at 9 o'clock, the doorbell rang, its cheerful chime slicing through the quiet morning. I was still cocooned in my robe, the warmth of my first cup of coffee seeping into my bones, when I opened the door to find Tom standing on our porch. He looked slightly disheveled, his usually neat hair a little out of place, as if he had been rushing. Beside him sat Buddy, a magnificent golden retriever with soft, intelligent eyes and an exuberance that seemed capable of melting even the most pet-averse soul. "Hey, thanks again for doing this, Sarah," Tom said, stepping inside, his voice carrying a note of genuine gratitude. He placed a large duffel bag filled with dog food, an assortment of colorful toys, and what appeared to be a comprehensive manual for Buddy's care on our hallway table. "It's no problem, Tom," I assured him, the warmth of Buddy's gentle nudging against my leg already softening my initial reservations. Tom offered a rare, unguarded smile, a genuine expression that revealed the underlying stress he had been under. "I really owe you one," he said, his eyes meeting mine for a brief, intense moment. We chatted for a few more minutes, Tom meticulously outlining Buddy's feeding schedule, his quirks, and his favorite squeaky toy. He glanced at his watch, a flicker of urgency crossing his face. "I have to get going or I'll miss my flight." As he turned to leave, I noticed the subtle shift in his posture, the way his shoulders seemed to relax, as if entrusting Buddy to our care had lifted a significant weight. "Have a safe trip, Tom," I called after him, watching his car disappear down our quiet street. And just like that, it was just me and Buddy. Initially, Everything proceeded as expected. Buddy was remarkably well behaved, settling into our home with surprising ease. I even found myself enjoying his quiet companionship, the rhythmic tap-tap-tap of his paws following me from room to room, his tail wagging with an infectious happiness. That evening, as I curled up on the sofa with a book, Buddy rested his large, golden head on my lap, a soft sigh escaping his contented muzzle. But then, something unexpected happened late that night. I was in the kitchen, the silence of the sleeping house enveloping me, as I reached for a glass of water. My phone buzzed softly on the counter. A message from Tom. "Hope Buddy isn't being too much trouble. Thanks again for helping out." A small smile touched my lips. It was a thoughtful gesture. I replied quickly, "Not at all. He's a sweetheart." A few seconds later, my phone lit up again. "That's good to hear. I was worried he might miss me too much." Truth be told, I already miss him. And our late-night conversations. Something about that last sentence made me pause, my fingers hovering over the screen. I knew Tom and Mark were close, their camaraderie forged in the trenches of corporate life. But Tom and I? Our interactions had always been polite, friendly, but strictly within the boundaries of casual gatherings. We had never engaged in private conversations, let alone late-night ones. "Well, I'm sure he'll be excited to see you Monday," I replied, keeping my tone deliberately neutral, a subtle wall erected between us. The reply took longer this time. "Yeah. Monday feels far away." I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Was I reading too much into this? Was he simply making polite conversation, expressing a natural longing for his pet? Shaking my head slightly, I dismissed the burgeoning unease and set my phone down, heading to bed. But sleep was a restless visitor that night, Tom's ambiguous words lingering in the quiet corners of my mind. The next day, as I went through the familiar motions of my routine, I found myself thinking about Tom more than I should have. His words, the fleeting intensity of his gaze when he dropped Buddy off, had there been something more there, a subtle undercurrent I had previously overlooked? Or was I simply overanalyzing, my mind conjuring meaning where there was none? Then, in the early afternoon, my phone buzzed again, the insistent vibration pulling me from my thoughts. "Hey, Sarah. Do you mind if I call you for a minute?" A wave of unexpected nervousness washed over me. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button. But a strange curiosity, a pull I couldn't quite explain, stayed my hand. I typed back a single word, "Okay." A moment later, my phone rang. I took a deep breath, the air catching slightly in my throat, and answered. "Hey," I said, trying to infuse my voice with the casual lightness that belied the sudden frantic rhythm of my heart. "Hey, Sarah," Tom responded, his voice sounding warmer, almost intimate, through the phone. "I hope I'm not bothering you." "Not at all," I lied smoothly, even as my pulse quickened, a strange, unfamiliar flutter in my chest. He exhaled softly, a hint of vulnerability in his tone. "I wanted to hear your voice." A strange, nervous energy coursed through me. This was definitely not a normal, neighborly check-in. "Tom," I said carefully, my voice betraying a tremor of apprehension, "is everything okay?" He was silent for a long moment, the only sound the faint static of the phone line connecting us across the miles. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and hesitant. I don't know," he admitted, the raw honesty in his tone taking me by surprise. "I think I've been holding on to something for a long time, and this weekend. Knowing you're the one looking after Buddy. Knowing you're there while I'm here. It's made me realize something." I swallowed hard, my grip tightening on the phone, my knuckles turning white. "Realize what?" "That. I've always thought of you as more than just Mark's wife." My breath hitched in my throat, a sudden constriction that stole the air from my lungs. For a disorienting moment, I wasn't sure if I had heard him correctly. Tom's unexpected confession hung in the air between us, an invisible weight pressing against my chest, heavy with unspoken possibilities and forbidden desires. "Tom," my voice was barely above a whisper, the word a fragile question mark. "I know," he said quickly, a note of panic creeping into his voice, as if regretting his impulsive confession. "I shouldn't have said that. He sighed, the sound carrying a profound sense of longing. "I've kept that to myself for a long time, and And I wasn't planning on ever saying it. But something about this weekend. I don't know. It just came out. I closed my eyes, my mind reeling, desperately trying to reconcile the Tom I thought I knew, the quiet, unassuming friend, with the man whose words had just detonated a silent bomb in my carefully ordered world. He had always been a peripheral presence in our lives, a comfortable fixture in the background. And yet, now that he had voiced this unexpected sentiment, something inside me shifted, a dangerous curiosity stirring alongside a quiet, unsettling realization that I wasn't entirely unaffected. I should have shut it down. I should have firmly stated the inappropriateness of his words, the unbreachable boundaries of my marriage. But instead, a question, fueled by a dangerous mix of curiosity and a long dormant yearning, slipped past my lips before I could stop it. How long? He hesitated, the silence on the other end of the line stretching into an eternity. A long time, he admitted finally, his voice heavy with a regret that mirrored my own burgeoning unease. Probably longer than I should have. I never wanted to interfere in your life, Sarah. You and Mark. You seemed happy. I swallowed hard, the word happy echoing in my mind, suddenly feeling hollow and inadequate. We are happy, I said, the affirmation sounding less like a truth and more like a desperate plea. Aren't we? Tom's voice softened, devoid of accusation, yet the gentle inquiry struck a raw nerve. Are you, Sarah? I opened my mouth to respond, to offer the automatic reassurances, the well-worn platitudes. But the words wouldn't come. Were we truly happy? Mark and I had been together for nearly 3 decades, a lifetime of shared experiences woven into the fabric of our existence. We had built a comfortable life, a stable family, a predictable routine. But in the quiet corners of my mind, in the stolen moments of solitude, a disquieting awareness had been growing. The vibrant spark of our early years had gradually dimmed, replaced by a comfortable familiarity that sometimes felt indistinguishable from mere habit. We still loved each other, I believed that with all my heart. But there were moments, quiet, introspective moments, where I felt like I was simply moving through the motions of my own life, a background character in my own story. I had never voiced this aloud, never even fully admitted it to myself. But now, Tom's simple question hung in the air, a stark and unsettling reflection of my own unspoken doubts. I don't want to cause trouble, Sarah, Tom continued, his voice laced with a genuine concern that tugged at my conflicted emotions. I needed to be honest with you. Even if nothing comes of it. Even if we never talk about this again. I exhaled slowly, the breath catching in my throat. Tom. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied softly, a gentle understanding in his tone. I needed you to know. A heavy silence stretched between us, the unspoken complexities of our situation creating an invisible barrier. Finally, I forced a small, unsteady laugh, the sound brittle and unnatural. Well, I said, trying to inject a semblance of normalcy into the surreal conversation, this is definitely not what I expected when I agreed to watch Buddy. Tom chuckled, the sound warm and familiar, a brief respite from the emotional turmoil. Yeah. Neither did I. For a fleeting moment, it felt almost normal again, just 2 old friends sharing an unexpected moment of levity. And yet, beneath the surface, everything had irrevocably changed. Listen, Sarah, Tom said after a beat, his voice regaining a serious tone. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. If you want to forget this conversation ever happened, I understand. Just say the word, and I promise I won't bring it up again. I should have said yes. I should have seized the escape route he was offering, retreated back to the familiar safety of my marriage, buried this unsettling confession deep within the recesses of my mind. But instead, I hesitated. And in that pregnant pause, that agonizing moment of indecision, I knew that my silence had spoken volumes, a silent acknowledgement of the unexpected stirrings within me. That night, sleep remained a distant luxury. I tossed and turned in the familiar expanse of our bed, Mark's quiet breathing a constant presence beside me, yet I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of conflicting emotions. My mind replayed our conversation with Tom over and over again, each word, each inflection, analyzed and dissected. I had spent years viewing him solely through the lens of his friendship with Mark, a benign figure in the periphery of my life. But now, His image had sharpened, his quiet attentiveness, the subtle warmth in his gaze, taking on a new, unsettling significance. And worst of all, I wasn't sure how I truly felt about it. By the next morning, I had almost convinced myself that it had been nothing more than a fleeting moment of weakness, a harmless confession fueled by loneliness and distance. Tom was miles away, and I would see him again on Monday. Everything would eventually revert to normal. Or so I desperately tried to believe. Just after lunch, my phone buzzed again, the familiar notification sending a jolt of unexpected anticipation through me. A message from Tom. "Sarah, would it be too much to ask if I called again?" I stared at the message, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I should have said no. I should have maintained the distance I knew was necessary. But instead, my fingers moved almost of their own volition, typing back a single, fateful word, "Okay." When I answered the call a few minutes later, Tom's voice was quiet, almost hesitant, mirroring the tumultuous emotions churning within me. "Hey." "Hey," I replied, my own voice betraying a tremor I couldn't control. "I wasn't sure if you'd pick up." A soft, nervous chuckle escaped my lips. Neither was I. A pause stretched between us, thick with unspoken feelings. Then, he asked, his voice barely a whisper, "Would it be wrong if I told you I wish I was there right now?" I exhaled slowly, the weight of his longing settling heavily upon me. "Tom, you don't have to say anything." He interrupted me gently, his voice laced with a raw vulnerability. "I just wanted you to know." Another silence descended, this one charged with an undeniable tension. And then, before I even fully understood the impulse, before my mind could fully process the implications, I whispered into the phone, the words a dangerous admission, "I wish you were here too." A sharp inhale echoed from his end of the line. And just like that, everything changed. The moment those four simple words left my lips, I felt a rush of something unfamiliar, something thrilling and terrifying all at once. "I wish you were here too." The unspoken desire hung in the air, a fragile bridge spanning the miles between us. Tom didn't say anything for a long moment, but I could hear his breathing on the other end of the line, slow and deep, as if he were absorbing the weight of my unexpected admission. "Are you sure?" His voice was softer now, cautious, almost reverent. I swallowed hard, pressing my fingertips to my temple, trying to quell the sudden dizzying rush of emotions. "I don't know," I admitted honestly, the vulnerability in my voice mirroring his own. "I just know that something about this feels different. And I don't know what to do with that." "I get it," he said after a beat, a quiet understanding in his tone. "I didn't mean to put you in this position." But the truth was, a small, reckless part of me wasn't entirely sure I minded being in this precarious position. There was something intoxicating about the attention, about the way Tom made me feel, seen, truly seen, not just as Mark's wife, not just as a mother, or as a woman who had spent years ensuring everyone else's needs were met, but as me. I couldn't remember the last time someone had made me feel that way, that singular, focused attention that made my heart flutter with a forgotten sense of self. "Do you ever wonder what life would have been like if we had met under different circumstances?" Tom asked suddenly, his voice a low, thoughtful murmur. I hesitated. I had never consciously considered that possibility before. I never thought about it before. "But you're thinking about it now," he observed gently. A shaky breath escaped my lips. "Yes." Another pause, then Tom's voice lowered, as if he were confessing a deeply held secret. "So am I." The rest of the day unfolded in a surreal haze. I moved through my usual routine, tidying the house, taking Buddy for a walk in the crisp autumn air, preparing dinner, but everything felt different, as if a thin veil had been lifted, revealing a hidden layer of possibility beneath the mundane surface of my life. It was like living in two realities simultaneously. In one, I was the devoted wife, the woman who had built a life with Mark, a life steeped in shared history and unwavering commitment. In the other, I was something else, someone else, someone who was allowing a man who wasn't her husband to slip into the quiet corners of her mind, his words echoing with a forbidden resonance. I kept telling myself that it was just words, that a simple conversation couldn't possibly change anything fundamental. But deep down, a nascent awareness stirred, a quiet understanding that something had indeed shifted within me, a subtle recalibration of my emotional landscape. That night, I sat on the couch, Absently stroking Buddy's soft fur, my thoughts tangled in a complex web of emotions I didn't fully understand. And then, as if summoned by my turbulent inner world, my phone lit up again. A message from Tom. My pulse jumped with a nervous anticipation as I opened it. "Can't sleep. Keep thinking about you." I stared at the screen, the stark simplicity of his words sending a shiver down my spine. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, a silent battle raging within me. I should have ignored it, should have extinguished this flickering flame before it had a chance to grow. But I didn't. Instead, I typed back a truth I could no longer deny: "Me too." A few seconds later, my phone buzzed again. I know this is probably the worst timing, but I have to ask. If things were different, if we had met before you and Mark, do you think we would have had a chance? I sucked in a breath, the weight of his question pressing down on me. Because I already knew the answer, a truth that had been quietly forming in the recesses of my heart. And this time, I didn't hesitate to tell him. Yes. The next morning, everything felt heavier, imbued with a strange sense of consequence. I woke up early, my thoughts still swirling in a restless eddy, my body feeling strangely disconnected. As I made coffee, the familiar aroma doing little to soothe my frayed nerves, Buddy sat patiently at my feet, his intelligent eyes looking up at me as if he sensed the unspoken turmoil within me. I sighed, absently rubbing his ears. "What am I doing, huh?" He simply wagged his tail, an innocent bystander in the complex drama unfolding within my heart. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over Tom's contact, a silent debate raging within me. Should I reach out first? But before I could make a decision, another voice interrupted my thoughts. "Morning." I turned, startled, to see Mark standing in the doorway, stretching his arms, his expression still sleepy. "Hey," I said, forcing a smile that felt brittle and unconvincing even to my own ears. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," he muttered, grabbing a mug from the cupboard and pouring himself coffee. Had a weird feeling. Something inside me clenched, a knot of guilt tightening in my stomach. "Like what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, nonchalant. He shrugged, his gaze distant. "I don't know. Just off." He took a slow sip of his coffee, then looked at me, his eyes lingering a little too long, studying me with an uncharacteristic intensity. "Are you okay?" My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat betraying the carefully constructed facade of normalcy. I opened my mouth to say yes, the automatic lie forming on my lips, but the word caught in my throat, a silent acknowledgement of the profound unease that consumed me. Because I wasn't okay. I was caught in something I didn't fully understand, a tangled web of burgeoning emotions that both scared and excited me, a path I wasn't sure I could, or even wanted to, stop treading. And that was the moment I realized this wasn't just a series of harmless conversations anymore. This was a turning point, a precipice, and I had no idea which way I was going to fall. The weight of everything settled upon me in that charged moment, Mark's searching gaze across the kitchen, the lingering echo of Tom's heartfelt words in my mind, and the quiet, undeniable truth pressing against my chest. I wasn't just caught between two conversations, I was standing at a crossroads, and no matter which path I chose, something would irrevocably change forever. "Are you sure you're okay, Sarah?" Mark asked again, his brow furrowed with concern. I hesitated, my fingers gripping my coffee mug so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Yeah," I said, forcing a small, reassuring smile that felt utterly false. "Just didn't sleep well." He nodded slowly, but something in his expression, a flicker of doubt in his usually trusting eyes, told me he wasn't entirely convinced. And perhaps, deep down, he shouldn't have been. The hours crawled by, each passing minute amplifying the tension that coiled tighter within me. I told myself to let it go, to push away the unexpected connection that had ignited between Tom and me, to retreat to the familiar comfort of my marriage. But it was impossible. His words had unraveled something fundamental within me, something I hadn't even realized was bound so tightly by years of routine and unspoken assumptions. By the late afternoon, the internal conflict had become unbearable. I picked up my phone, my hands trembling slightly as I typed out a message, a desperate plea for connection, for understanding. "Can we talk for a minute?" A tense silence followed, each passing second feeling like an eternity. Then, finally, my phone buzzed. A message from Tom. I was hoping you'd say that. We spoke in hushed, careful words, both of us acutely aware that we were treading on dangerous ground, venturing into a territory where unspoken desires and uncertain futures intertwined. I don't want to hurt you, Sarah, he said softly, his voice filled with a genuine remorse. I know, I whispered, the guilt gnawing at me. I don't want to hurt Mark either. A heavy silence stretched between us, the weight of our shared predicament hanging in the air. Then, Tom exhaled, a sound that carried a profound sense of longing. But I also can't pretend I don't feel this. Neither can I admitted, the truth a quiet confession. And that was the crux of the matter, the impossible dilemma that held me captive. I closed my eyes, inhaling deeply, the scent of the lingering afternoon sun on the air doing little to calm the storm within. I don't know what to do, Tom. I'm not asking you to do anything, Sarah, he said gently, his voice a soothing balm against my inner turmoil. I just need you to know. Know that if things were different, if there was ever a world where we weren't bound by timing and circumstance, I wouldn't have let you go unnoticed. His words felt like a confession, a heartfelt wish, a poignant heartbreak wrapped in the fragile possibility of what could have been. And in that moment, a profound realization washed over me. Tom wasn't trying to pull me away from my life, he was simply showing me something I had forgotten, something that had been dormant for too long, what it felt like to be truly seen, to be wanted, to be chosen for who I was, beyond the roles I played. And maybe, just maybe, that was why this unexpected connection had occurred. Perhaps it wasn't solely about what I was missing with Mark, but about what I had forgotten about myself, the woman I used to be, the woman I still was, the woman I needed to be again. That evening, as I sat across from Mark at the dinner table, the familiar comfort of our shared routine feeling suddenly inadequate, I studied him in a way I hadn't in a long time. The man who had stood by my side for so many years, the man I had built a life with. There was a deep, abiding comfort in that familiarity, a sense of security woven into the fabric of our daily lives. But comfort, I realized with a sudden clarity, could sometimes lull you into a false sense of complacency, making you forget that even the deepest love needed to be actively tended to, nurtured, seen. I understood then that this wasn't ultimately about Tom, it was about me. I needed to rediscover that part of myself that still yearned to feel desired, alive, noticed. And maybe, just maybe, that was a conversation I needed to have with Mark, not Tom. Later that night, after Mark had fallen asleep beside me, his breathing even and peaceful, I picked up my phone and sent one last message to Tom. Thank you for making me remember something important. His reply came almost instantly. And what's that, Sarah? I stared at the screen for a long time, the soft glow illuminating the conflicted emotions swirling within me before finally typing back a truth that felt both terrifying and liberating. That I don't want to live the rest of my life just feeling comfortable. I want to feel more. A pause, then his final reply that night, a simple yet profound encouragement that resonated deep within my soul. Then don't be afraid to ask for it. I put down the phone, a slow, deliberate exhale escaping my lips. And then, I turned to Mark, the man who lay sleeping beside me, the man I had promised forever to, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid to finally say what was truly on my mind. The simple favor had indeed taken a shocking turn, not towards a forbidden affair, but towards a long overdue reckoning with myself and the unspoken desires that had been quietly simmering beneath the surface of my seemingly content life. The future remained uncertain, the path ahead unclear, but one thing was undeniable: the comfortable complacency of my past had been shattered, and the journey toward a more authentic, more deeply felt future had just begun.